Okay, so let's learn about arrays. So why do we require arrays? That is the first thing we need to know. Then we shall understand what exactly is an array. As discussed in the previous video, so say suppose I want to store the names of 100 students. So if you want to store the names of 100 students, so normally you need to create 100 variables. Example, string type name1 equal to Raju. String type name2 equal to John. So like this, you have to create 100 variables. That is when you will be in a position to store 100 names. But this approach is not recommended. It increases the length of the program. According to the performance wise, it is really bad. So to overcome this problem, we will use one data structure. That data structure is an array. Now, how can we store these 100 student names inside an array? So what you need to do, this array is basically like a container. So what is this array? This array is basically like a container. So inside that container, you can store all the 100 names like Raju, John, Mary, Tim, and so on. So like this, you can store all the names within this container. And for this container, you will also be giving a name, something like student names. So student names is the container which will store all the names. Now, if you clearly notice, you need not create 100 variables to store 100 names. Just if you create one container, inside that container, you can store how many ever names you want. So this is the advantage of an array. Now, what is this container called as? So this container only we call it as a object. That container only we call it as a object. Yes, arrays are nothing but objects in Java. So what are arrays? Arrays are nothing but objects in Java. So this container that you see, it's an object. And what will an object store? Object will store some data. That is what we are doing here. So we have a container which is basically a object, and within that container we are storing how many names? We are storing 4 names. Like that, you can store any number of names you want. And for this entire object, there is one variable pointing, or for this entire container, there is one variable pointing, and that variable is nothing but student names. So this is how an array will be internally represented. Now let's go in depth about the internal representation. So this was just an overview. Let's go with the internal representation in the memory level. So if we want to understand arrays concept in memory level, so first we need to create an array. So let's create one array that will store some data, and how that array will be represented in the memory level. Let's discuss. The question is, how can we create an array? Since we know arrays are objects in Java, arrays are objects in Java. Since we already know that, Whenever you want to create any object in Java, you will be using one keyword, which is new keyword. New keyword is used to create a object in Java. In the same way, since arrays are objects, so if we want to create an array, if we want to create an array, then we need to use new keyword. The question is how to use new keyword to create an array. So I will take one question. So what is the question? So create an array that stores the marks of 10 subjects. So there are 10 different subjects and every subject is having some marks. So I want to create an array that stores the marks of 10 subjects. So if you don't use array, you have to create 10 variables. So int type mark1 equal to maybe 56 is the first mark. Int type mark2 equal to 98 is the second mark. Like this, you have to create 10 variables. But our question is not by creating a normal variables. Our goal is to create an array. How to create an array? So as I told you, if you want to create an array, since arrays are objects, you can create an array using new keyword. So you tell new. After tell, what is the type of the information you want to store? See, I want to store the marks of 10 subjects. Tell me, marks will be a number, marks will be a integer or a string or a boolean. Normally, marks will be a integer. So you tell new integer. Within square brackets, you should tell how many marks you want to store. I want to store total of 10 marks. Within this, I will tell 10. That's it. So this is how you need to write. So whenever you tell this particular line, how it will look at the memory level, let's understand. So this is your computer. This is your computer. And every computer contains something called as a RAM, random access memory. So it is a memory present inside the computer. So inside this computer, so this box, let's assume this is a RAM. It can be 8 GB RAM or 12 GB RAM, doesn't matter. So this box is the RAM which is present inside this computer. Remember, inside the RAM, there will be one memory that will be created. What is the memory that will be created inside the RAM? Inside the RAM, the memory that would be created is nothing but a heap memory. So what is the memory that will be created inside the RAM? Heap memory. Now the question is, who will create this heap memory inside your RAM? So there is one person who is responsible for that. That person is JVM, which stands for Java Virtual Machine. So now one heap memory is created inside the RAM. Now remember this point. What is the use of a heap memory? Heap memory is the area where all the objects in Java will be stored. So what is the speciality of heap area? Heap area is the area where all the objects created in your Java program will be kept. Objects, how will you normally create? Using new keyword. Here also we did the same thing. So I told a new keyword. So as soon as you tell new keyword, inside the heap memory, one object will be automatically created. So when you tell new keyword, one object will be automatically created inside the heap area. So this circle, it's the object. Now inside this object, what will be kept? So you are basically telling you want to store integers. How many integers you want to store? You want to store 10 integers. So automatically inside this object, 10 memory locations will be created. First memory location, second memory location, third location or a third box. Like this, 10 locations will be created inside that object. 10 locations will be created inside that object. Inside each location, all the marks will be kept. For example, in future, we will provide 10 marks. The first mark will be kept in the first location. The second mark will be kept in the second location. The third mark will be kept in the third location. So like this, 10 locations will be created inside that object, and that object will be created inside the heap memory. You know, whenever a object is created, for that object, one variable should be pointing. One variable should point to that object. So that if a variable is pointing to that object, using that variable, you can access the information present in that object. Now, that variable which will point to an object, that variable only we normally call it as reference variable. Reference variable is a variable which is referring to an object or which is pointing to an object. But in our case, I told new int of 10. This will create an object with 10 locations. But anywhere, did I give any reference variable to this object which got created? No. So on the left side, I will give one reference variable. I will give the reference variable to be something like marks. Because you tell marks, so that marks is a reference variable which is pointing to that array or which is pointing to that object which has 10 locations in it. You know, in Java, when you create a variable, you should also tell the type of the variable. Tell me, what is the type of the marks variable? See, marks variable is pointing to an array. Array means it's an object only. So marks is pointing to an array which contains what type of data? Integer type of data, na? So I will tell marks is of type int. And make sure, since marks is not a normal variable, it is a variable which is pointing to an array. So that is when you will tell square brackets. That is when you will tell square brackets. Square brackets tells it is a one dimension array. Again, what is one dimension array, two dimension array, multi dimensions? We will discuss it. But any variable, if it's pointing to an array, so normally you will attach these square brackets telling this marks is not a normal variable. This marks is pointing to an array. So how will you tell that? You will tell by telling square brackets here, or you can also tell it here. Anywhere it's fine, not a problem. So the meaning of this statement is one integer type array I am creating with 10 locations. To that integer type array, marks is the reference variable which is pointing. And what is the type of the marks variable? The types of the marks variable is again a integer type array. That's it. So this is how you can create an array in Java. Now, once array is created, I want to store the values in that array, because in this line, we just created an array with these many locations. But in these 10 locations, anywhere am I storing any marks? 100% no. So we have to store the marks. How to store the marks? Remember, for every location, one number will be assigned internally. For example, inside this object, 10 locations will be created. So for each location, one number will be given. So the first location number will start from 0. The second location will be 1. The next location will be 2. Like this, for all the 10 locations, a unique number will be assigned. So this number, we call it as a position or an index. Now what I will do, notice, I will tell marks. When I tell marks, I am referring to the entire array. But if I tell of 0, I am referring to the first element in the array, or I am referring to the first location in my array. The first location in my array is blank. So I want to store the mark in that first location. And what is that marks I need to store? 97. So because you tell 97, in that first location, that number 97 will be kept. Same way, if you want to store one more, if you want to store the next marks in the next location, you will tell marks of, tell me, the second location in the array is referred by what position? 1. I will tell marks of 1, which will refer the second location, give the value as 45. Like this, you will continue till marks of 9, because marks of 9 will refer to the 10th location, and in the 10th location I will also give the mark as 90. So this is how you will create an array in Java, and this is how you will store the elements or the values inside the array. And this is how in memory arrays will be normally represented. So hope all of you have got clarity. What is an array? How to create an array? Whether arrays are objects or they are not objects. How it is represented in the memory level. So where memory will be created. So all these things now we have got clarity. Now this is one way in which you can create an array. So there is one more way in which you can create an array. How? So you will tell the same thing here as well. Even in the next approach, you will tell the same thing. Left side will be the same, but in the right side, within the flower brackets, you will directly store the marks like 98, 45, 66, 54, 90. Like this, you will directly store the marks within the flower brackets. So this is one more way how to work with arrays or how to create an array. So because you tell this particular line, again, one object will be created inside the heap memory. To that object, marks is the variable which will point. And how many values you are trying to store in the array? 5 values. Means within this object, 5 locations will be automatically created. And in each location, the corresponding value will be kept. The first value in the first location, second value in the second location, third value in the third location, and so on. So even in this approach, you are creating an array. Even in this approach, you are creating an array and storing the details. Then what is the difference? Which one we need to prefer? Students, you will use this approach whenever you want to create an array. If you know how many elements you want to store in the array right from the beginning itself. For example, you want to create an array with 10 marks. So if you know what are those 10 marks initially itself, at the compile time itself, or initially itself, if you know what are those marks you want to store in the array, then you can use the second approach. When will you go for the first approach? You will go for the first approach when you don't know what are the marks you will store in the beginning. You know that you want to store 10 marks, but you don't know what are those 10 marks. Is it 97, 98, 45? You don't know what are those marks. In future, you will provide those marks during the runtime. That is when you will go for this approach. So once again, so you will go for the second approach if you know what elements should be kept inside in the array right from the beginning. You will go for this approach when you don't know what are those exact elements that you want to keep in the array. Later in the future, you will provide the elements by accessing the appropriate location. So hope all of you have got clarity. So whatever we have learned it theoretically, in the next lecture, let's implement it practically. And that's it for this video.